Cool. So we are going to get started up again. I think probably some people realized it was sunny and this was about to be the last hours of sun, so they probably headed out early, which is fine. We're going to go through and maybe we'll get out early. We're going to try and basically do a small project, and then we're probably going to finish that up before the end time that we set of 8. So realistically, as soon as we're done with this, it's just going to be question and answer time. Head out if you have other things to do time. Hang out here and work on the project time and ask more questions. Basically, whatever you want. So we're going to do the project first. So the last quick announcements were, since this kept coming up, was if you want to learn more Python before you head out today and you want to learn more Python, we have a meetup that meets every Thursday right now. That link at the top there is going to get you to our meetup.com page. The middle link, if you want to ask more questions of anybody in the group who's in that, is the Slack group for the RedmondPython group. And that you can essentially, as a chat room, you just go in there, you make an account, you can ask us questions. You say, hey, Fernando, where can I learn more about blah, blah, blah? Hey, everybody in the Python group, how can I learn more about blah, blah, blah? And you can ask those questions in there, and we'll hopefully give you some good answers. So right now, we're going to start with the project for the course. Now, we might still have our Python interpreters open, and it might still have those 3 alligator brackets there. We're going to go ahead and get out of that. So we're going to go back to doing what we were doing before with our operating system. So this might look the same thing on Windows. We might actually have something, we might have something that currently looks like this. Oh, I don't know what it was that I typed in here. Oh, Python. There we go. So we might have something that looks like this now. We want to get out of it because we're going to talk to our operating system again. So we're going to go back out to that other level. So go ahead and do that now so you don't see the alligator brackets on the bottom of whatever window you have open. If you have problems with that, then ask a TA to come over and help you get there. Now the next thing we're going to do is go to GitHub. GitHub is a site for hosting code. And it's going to let us actually pull down the code for the project that we'll be doing. So I've written a small project that you'll be interacting with and modifying and running. And this is going to allow us to interact with Twitter.com. I've created a Twitter account and some API credentials, which are basically some keys that we can use to get access to a Twitter account. And we're just going to post things on that Twitter account all together. We're all going to post nice things on there because it's called Salutations Bot. It's just going to greetings and hellos and things like that. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and take this link. I don't have it for you to copy anywhere, sorry. So go ahead and go to github.com. Say yes. Oh, can they not see it?
The credentials.
Oh, they'll have it all. Yeah, don't worry. You don't need the credentials. Those are in the project, which is bad practice, but we'll talk about that later. So go ahead and go to github.com/Fernando-MC/Sparrow3. So I'm going to do that over here. I've gone ahead and navigated to this already. I'll try and make this a little bigger. And it's kind of hard to view this in here. Sorry about that. Sorry, github.com/Fernando-MC, so -MC. /Sparrow-3. Another way you can just get it is go to github.com/Fernando-MC, and you can click on this repositories button here and find Sparrow3 at the top. So we're just going to, whenever we get there, whenever we're at that page, we're going to get the code from this page. Now, some of you might have something called Git installed on your systems already. You might not know it. Maybe you have it, maybe you don't. It's fine. We could use that to get the code and actually start running this. So that's what a lot of software developers will do. But I don't want to have to teach you Git and make you learn a bunch of weird stuff about that right now. So we're going to kind of cheat, and we're going to actually just download this, this code here. Hey, welcome back. So we are going to actually go ahead and click on the clone or download button. And instead of cloning, we're just going to download a zip file. And go ahead and do that now on your machines. And it should download. It'll look different on Windows than it will look on my machine. But get that, and then go ahead and move that download to your desktop again. Because most of you, I think, were already in your terminals interacting with stuff on your desktop before. So we're going to do that again. So I've gone ahead. On this machine, I can just show all my downloads, or I can just show in folder. And then I can drag this thing that I just downloaded, over here to desktop. So that now I'll have, this shouldn't be here yet. So now I'll have this little zip file on my desktop. So once I have that, depending on if you're on Windows or on a Mac, we're going to do something similar where we're going to right-click it and we're going to open it or extract it here. So I'm going to click extract here, and this is going to turn it from the zip file into a folder that we're actually going to be using with the code in it. So if you get stuck on this, please raise your hand and we'll go around and help you out. On a Windows machine, I'll do the exact same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one more time to show you all how you could do that. So Windows machine, I go here, clone or download, download zip. Oh, apparently I can also open a desktop on here, but I don't know what that does, so I'm going to do download zip. And then I'm going to go here, and this will probably open it up in my downloads folder. Now I'm going to drag this over to desktop, and then it should be on my desktop on my Windows machine. Now, sorry, online people, you probably can't see this because I'm only sharing one screen. So then on desktop here, I now have it here, and I'm going to extract all and extract it here. And now we'll have this extracted stuff on our desktop. So hopefully that kind of explains it. If I go back to desktop, you'll see how it's here. It's extracted, and we might have another folder inside of that. So there might be a few folders within folders, but don't worry too much about them now. So raise your hand if you have that done. Okay, raise your hand if you don't have that done. Okay, so don't have that done, people. Keep your hands raised. We're going to go and try and help. So Sarah, keep your hands raised or way less one of us down so we can help you out. Other people can help those folks as well. So let's check. So did you download it already? So scroll down left. Folder download right there. And then go and click download zip. Yep, and then save. Yes, save as is fine. Save it on your desktop. Save yourself. Save yourself. And then go ahead and save that. And now you can open that folder actually. So we can actually go back to that window on the right side is fine. So now go to the desktop. And right click there on that zip. And we're going to have an extract. So now go ahead and click OK. That's going to extract everything on our desktop. This is kind of what we want, so that's good. You're at the step. Other people who needed help doing that? So because this is a project, people are going to be going at different paces. Don't worry too much because we'll go over all this with you and just kind of work everybody through the process. So once I've done this and I've extracted this on my desktop, I'm going to go back to the command prompt or the terminal or whatever I'm using, and hopefully I'm still at the desktop from earlier. If I'm not, there's those two commands that we need to remember. So one is dir, which says what's in the place I'm working in. So in this case, I see that I have this Sparrow 3 master thing there, so I want that. That's good. This is on my desktop. So I'm going to use the cd command. Let me move this up. Sorry that you can't see this very well. Sure, yeah, of course. We'll go back. We'll go back and go over things as well. So this is for the people who've already kind of got there. So you could cd into Sparrow 3 master and hit enter. You could do dir again. You might have to go one more time in the Sparrow 3 master. Sorry, that's just kind of how it downloads by default. And then right in here, you could do dir one more time, and it'll show you things like license, readme, sparrow.py. Now on a Windows, or sorry, on a non-Windows machine, this is what you would do on a non-Windows machine. So I'm on my desktop. I downloaded Sparrow 3 master, and I extracted it there. I'm going to use cd Sparrow 3 master. Now I can use ls to tell me what's in there, and now I'm in the right spot. So Windows might do it a little differently than a Mac or a Linux machine. So just make sure that you are, when you're typing either dir or ls, you see these 3 files that are right here, because those are the ones we need when we're working with the projects. So if you're not at that step, please raise your hand and we'll come around and help. Are you all good? Okay, you're all good. Cool. Great. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so okay, that's fine. So that's you're right where you good? Yeah. Great. Cool. Can you do CD Sparrow 3 master? Yeah. I know one more DIR. I know for some reason Windows will put a folder in the folder and kind of weird. So Windows is a little different than Mac and Linux. Windows, when you extract it, it's actually going to extract it to like a folder within a folder. So you might have to do CD /3-master twice, and then you press DIR, and then you'll see what I see right there. So what I had to do up here. And my machine was basically that. So you see here how my path is like desktop /3 master /3 master. That's kind of a weird Windows thing. That's expected for you if you have that. So who's not there? Who's not able to in their command prompt or terminal say dir and see a license of readme in a sparrow, or say ls and see a license of readme in a sparrow? Anyone not there? Awesome. Well, there might be a few people, but go ahead and Raj, go ahead and go back there and make sure they're set. Yeah, I don't know. They might need more help, but otherwise. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next step now. So the cool thing about this project is that we actually have a lot of the instructions inside one of the files in here. So there's a file called readme.md, and this is just kind of a general programming thing. When you see a readme file, it wants you to read the file. And that's going to tell you what you need to do, potentially to start up the project, or it's going to give you some background about how the project works. So usually that's a good place to start. Now I'm going to go through that file with you because I want to be able to help you understand it. But readme.md means readme.markdown. Now Markdown is a kind of a syntax that you can use, a way of typing stuff in that will highlight code and do stuff certain ways. I'll actually go ahead and open up the readme file inside of the Chrome on the GitHub page, and it'll display it a certain way for me. Okay, so what we're going to do today is work with a project called Sparrow that I put together for you, and it's a kind of a little lightweight shell program that's going to let you get started using some tools to send things out to Twitter. Now this is for Python 3. It's not going to necessarily work with Python 2. And really big disclaimers that I have for you is that to make this workshop work effectively for everyone and not waste a bunch of your time, I've gone ahead and created a throwaway account that I don't care about. That's a Twitter account called SalutationsBot. I'm not SalutationsBot. It's just a stupid account that I don't care about. And I've gotten some API credentials from Twitter so that we can use these special values. API credentials look like kind of strings that are just random gibberish, but that allow us to interact with some services to do specific things. And I'll answer more questions on that later. But basically, I put those in the code that I've given all of you. Now, if this was my account that we were doing this with, that would be really bad. And generally, you just don't want to put API credentials or any types of credentials in your code because it could make it easier for people to see that and do bad things with it. So that is my really important caveat to this whole particular project. I did it to make it easy, but it's bad. So sorry. So next thing we're going to take a look at is we're going to go through some of the setup steps. So you've already installed Python 3, so you should be good on step 1. The next thing we're going to do is actually make sure to deal with a clean version of a Python environment. So when we're working with Python, Python is going to, by default, look for some files on your operating system when it wants to install or use some things called packages. And packages are basically chunks of code that let us do other cool things without us having to write all that code again. Now, generally, Python's going to check for those on our operating system, but sometimes that can kind of get messy because we have maybe some packages installed and other people don't have packages installed. So when we want to get a clean version of everything, we want to work with virtual environments. When we want to get a clean version of everything, we can use something called a virtual environment. Now, in this particular case, when I'm saying virtual environment, I mean a Python virtual environment. It's kind of confusing because technically what I'm running all of this stuff in that you see right here is a virtual environment of an operating system called Ubuntu on my Windows laptop. So that's confusing. That's one kind of virtual environment. We're going to deal with a Python virtual environment. So to do that, we're going to run these commands that you see in step 3. So on a Mac or a Linux machine, so only Mac or Linux people are going to do this, we're first going to run, and actually Windows people will do this very first command in step 2, we're going to run Python. Now, depending on if you have a set up Python, the word Python to be thought of as a Python 3 or a Python 2. This may or may not work. And we can test this really quick. Let's just make sure, for me, when I'm saying Python, my computer thinks Python 2.7. That might be different for you. Some of you have Python going to Python 3.5 or 3.6. So for me, this isn't going to work if I just say Python. For some of you, you might need to do Python 3. Just make sure whatever initial part of the command that you're using is going to make sure that we're talking about Python 3. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of this. Now, so for me, this is Python 3 that I need to put at the very beginning of this command. For some of you, again, it might be Python 2. It's whichever one works to do this. Then we're going to use a -m here. And this is saying, okay, I want to go reference a module in Python that's going to let me do a cool thing. So when we do this, we're going to say, okay, what module do you want to reference, Fernando? It's going to say, okay, I want to reference venv. Venv stands for virtual environment. So we're using venv to create a Python virtual environment. And then because we have to have one more thing here, we have to actually tell Python, okay, what do you want this called? What do you want to call this Python virtual environment? I'm going to call it myvenv. Technically, you could call it something different, but I suggest you call it this for the demo so we don't get any confusing differences. And then we can hit enter. Now this might take a second, because what's happening right now is Python is creating a whole separate installation of Python 3. It's creating a whole separate installation of a tool called pip, which is the Python package manager that we'll be using in just a second. And it's setting all that up in the current directory. So for the Windows users and the Mac users, you should be at the same step right now. Now, this next command will either be ls on a Mac or a Linux machine, or dir on the Windows machines. Now, this should show you that you now have my_venv. And that should be a folder that you have in there, a directory that you have in there. So this directory contains a bunch of stuff that's going to save us some time and make things less complicated and confusing later on. So the next thing we're going to do is we'll have one command for a Mac machine or a Linux machine and another command for Windows. So this command on my Linux machine right now is turning on my virtual environment. So you see here now I have myvenv on the left side here. This means the light switch is on and I've turned on my virtual environment. I'm interacting inside that environment. I've got my own little box set up that I'm working inside of. Now on Windows, you'll run a different command, which is right here. So what you're going to do here is you're going to run technically a script that is going to do the equivalent on Windows. So you're going to reference myvenv, and then keep in mind that the direction of these slashes matters. So this is going to be a backslash. It's going to be myvenv on again on Windows, scripts with a capital S, and then another backslash, activate, and then hit enter, and that should do something similar to what I just did right here. So that's going to put myvenv at the front there. So once you've done that, you should see something either like this or like this right here if you're on a Windows machine, something like that. Now the ending of this is probably something different. That includes like Sparrow 3 twice in it, and maybe says desktops on this something. So the important part is that you see the myvenv at the front of it. So if you don't have that, please raise your hand. Okay, can we get some TAs around and we'll help the Windows users out. We'll work through. Okay, so try to so it works. Right there. It just doesn't show you unless you get so now you type the next command is highlighted. Sorry, that's not highlighted. dir is on Windows. dir is also the same thing. Yes, so you need to type it for Windows. So your command, the Windows command, is this one right here. So on Windows, that's what you're running. Try that. Basically, it's in here. So tapping is option. So that's right. They press that. So that auto. Now do DRR one more time. So start back on step 2. Go to step 2's command or step highlighter. That is on my desktop. Oh, no, that is on the right. It's really hard to see. If anybody's having trouble finding the README, if you're on GitHub.com, you can just click the README file and that'll have instructions like showing you right there. Sorry about that. Yes. Start on step. That's really hard to see. Let me make that bigger. Let me make that quite a bit bigger because that's hard for me to see back there. Let me make this a little more easy to view here. Okay. Who still needs help? Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so do DIR. Can you just try DIR? Maybe you didn't write it. Oh, no, that's right. That's right there. So you already have it. You have it. My baby. But maybe you created it and you interrupted it. So let's try. Yeah, I don't know if this command will do this. Let's try it. Try it. What I would say is this can just make it help. I'd say let's try it. So now you change the we're going to have to source Fara. Leave it. It's doing its thing. It'll take a second. Sometimes it takes a little longer than so just let it go. It's got to download some stuff right now. So it should finish. Get over here. Work over here. Yes. Okay, so try it. So it's not a you can actually create it. So go back one step. Go back to step 2. Doesn't run and it should now. So right here, run back in. And it might take a second. Sorry. I think I'm all set. So let that finish. So everybody's going to take a little bit different amount of time for this particular step because everybody's going to have different quirks on their own system. So I'm going to jump ahead so that the TAs can help the people who have some TAs. Please keep helping the people who are further back. I'm just going to jump ahead so the people who are already done can then also help the people who are further back. So the next thing you're going to do, if you're at this step and you see MyVenv, this is a virtual environment that we have created, and that's going to keep things a little cleaner for us on our operating system. So now what we can do is you can actually take advantage of this virtual environment to install something clean and fresh inside of this. Now the way we're going to do this is using a tool called pip. Now pip is a installer for Python packages. So what this means is that it's going to go out and get the software that we can use in our programs and make it easier for us to actually run programs. So the program that I have written relies on some other stuff that we need. So to get that, we're going to use pip to get that. So we're going to use this pip install Python command. Now the capitalization does matter here, so we're going to go ahead and run this on our machines. I'm going to do pip install, and then we're going to do Python exactly as we see it here. Python, T-W-Y-T-H-O-N, and then we're going to hit enter. Now this should go out, and it could do a few different things here, but it should work. It'll look different for people's machines. But it should go out and get a package called Python, and it'll go out and get a bunch of other stuff that Python actually needs for it to work. Now that's a bunch of Python code that other people have written and other people maintain, and we're going to take advantage of it. Now in order to check that this worked after you run that command, you can do pip freeze. And pip freeze is going to say, what do you have in your virtual environment right now? It's going to tell you, okay, well, here's all the stuff that you have access to. Here's all the stuff that you've installed. Now, this looks a little different. We only installed Python. Why do we have all this other crud here? Well, the reason for that is because Python requires all this other stuff for it to work. So that's what we've done here. We've installed Python and everything it needs to work effectively. Now, once we've done that, are there questions about installing that and running that command? Is anybody even stuck on that step? Cool. Now, if you're a little further back, sorry, I'm going to just get through this so we can get back to you.
You're missing one.
Missing one what?
One of those.
So it could depend on the operating system.
Okay.
So different operating systems might require a different library to interact with the operating system. That's a good question. So your particular results here might look slightly different than mine if you're on Windows, because this is running inside of Ubuntu. So Ubuntu might need a separate dependency to manage that operating system. So good, that's a good question. So let's go ahead and actually get to the work on the project. So inside of this directory, so if you're on Windows, you can type dir. Now dir and ls are basically the same thing, just on different operating systems. So dir on Windows would list everything out. On Unix or Mac, I'm going to use ls. And then let's go ahead and see. We have sparrow.py in there. So let's actually work with the sparrow.py file. So in here, someone who's more Windows familiar might be able to help me with this. But on my computer, on a Unix machine, a Linux machine or a Mac, we could just do open sparrow. Oops, sorry, that's not what we want to do. We could do open sparrow.py, and that should open up sparrow.py in some sort of text editor. Now, it depends on how we have things set up on our machines. Another way we could do this is just open up the file browser on our machines and find this directory. So double-click into each directory that we extracted and look for sparrow.py. And then we can open that with a program like Sublime Text if we installed that, or Notepad if you don't have Sublime Text. Notepad works on Windows, or for Mac, there's like a text edit program. Go ahead, Mohammed. That I think would also work. I'm not sure how. I don't know if I installed this here. I did install it here. So Notepad space sparrow.py. So that would work as well. So it looks a little ugly because
you need to open up that
I think, yeah, it looks like Notepad doesn't care about my Python file very much. So Notepad might not be the best one. I don't know if Notepad++ is on here. Yeah. Okay, Sublime. Hopefully this works. I don't know if that's, no, Sublime Text. I'm not sure the exact command that would do it. It's probably like Sublime, maybe it's, let's see. Nope, it depends on some installation stuff, but another way you could do this on a Windows machine is just go to your desktop in your file browser. Just go double click on the desktop, find that Sparrow3 master, click into there, and then click on this and open with, and we could do open, but in this case we want to open it with a specific file. So I have Sublime installed, so I want to drag it into Sublime, and then it's theoretically, I thought that would do it. Oh my gosh, I'm killing something here. So we could also just do right click and open with Sublime, yeah. And this is kind of, there we go, so that should be in there. I don't know what's going on there. I think I'm getting something mad at me there. But then once you manage to open this, it should look something like this. So let's go back here and let's interact with it. Question? Did I hear a question? No. It looks what? Oh, yeah, I don't think Notepad is the best one. If you have Sublime, that's what I would suggest. We can get Sublime installed for you too in a little bit. So I'm going to very quickly go through what's in here. It's a small program, and we're going to need to change maybe 2 things in here. So let's go scroll up here. So at the very top, there is some syntax we haven't encountered before. I'm going to briefly explain it, but we're not going to change too much inside of this, and we're going to learn a few new concepts. So at the very top, we're importing some things which are dependencies that we need. So what this does is it brings in other people's code that they've written to allow us to do things with functions, with other things that we didn't learn about called classes, and with just other variables that maybe we want to use. So when we're importing stuff, we're either bringing other people's code in, or we're bringing in kind of the default Python libraries that Python gives to us. And some of those are included at the top, whereas that line 4 there from Python import Python is importing something from the Python dependency that we installed. The next thing we're doing down here on line 8 is we're actually setting up some variables, and in this case we're putting them in all caps because we're going to use them later. Maybe all caps is just the convention we want to use here. And in this case, again, these are values that I would strongly suggest not to store in version control or to do things with like this in the future. And these are what we're going to need to interact with the Twitter API. Now the next thing we're going to do just a little bit lower is we're going to create another variable called Twitter. Now this Twitter variable is going to be something that, another concept that we haven't covered, which is going to be something called an instance of a class. So that sounds kind of complicated and confusing, but what that means is essentially when we dealt with functions before, we just had a function, an open parenthesis, close parenthesis. Well, this is essentially something that's going to allow us to use multiple functions from one particular variable. And I'll show you what that looks like. But how we do this is we actually set this equal to this right here. Now this is a multi-line variable assignment right here, so don't get too confused by this. This is essentially equivalent to this right here. It's just a little bit cleaner and easier to read. So that's why we've done this here. Now, Python is going to take those API credential values that we have up there on lines 8 through 11, and it's going to turn those into a way to interact with the Twitter APIs. And the API just stands for Application Programming Interface. All you have to know is it's a way for us to talk to Twitter. And then down here, we're doing the last few things. And I swear we don't have to do too much to this. The only line we need to change is on line 18. So on line 18, we can actually set up some potential tweets we want to send out to Twitter. Now, what this program will do is it will take one of the potential tweets we are setting up, and it will send a tweet out with that tweet. So keep what you're writing in the strings that we're about to add underneath 240 characters, I guess. I don't know what Twitter does now. And we're going to write a message. So I'm going to say, hi, this is Fernando. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in there. And I can leave this comment here if I want, because we talked about comments before. With Python sees a pound symbol, it will ignore everything after. And also Sublime is nice because it kind of lets us know that, because it shows us the gray text instead of the other kind. So put at least one string in there. If you want to put 2 strings, what we're actually dealing with here is something called an array or a list. And this is going to allow us to put more than one. So I could say, comma here, this is also Fernando. And those are 2 strings that I would be putting into this new potential tweets variable, which is an array. And the reason it's an array is because it has these particular square brackets on the outside. I know this is lots of new stuff, but I swear it's going to be cool once you get to it and we can dive into the specifics more. Now, we already talked about functions, so now we're defining our own function here. And in this function, we're saying kind of what it does with those triple quotes, and that's another convention that's saying this is something called a docstring, and that's just going to question. Yes, feel free to interrupt me. That's fine. Okay, never mind. So This triple quote thing here is something called the doc string, which is going to tell us more about the function. Don't worry about that. This, again, can go straight over. And on these next lines here on 22 and 23, we're going to create another variable, which uses some other stuff that we haven't really looked at called random, which we had up here. We imported this dependency. And back down here, we're going to use essentially a function from random, where we'll take a random thing out of this that we just defined here. Okay, I know that was a lot. I just wanted to give you a quick overview of what it was and how it's working here. Now, the last two lines are where we actually get to work. So this function that we're defining, we finished defining this function on line 23, where we use this Twitter client that we created earlier, and then we send this particular thing here. Now, this is kind of like a function. It's basically the same thing. Technically, we call it a method because it belongs to the Twitter variable, which is a class thing that we got. Again, I'm just skimming over this, but it works the same. We have to pass it in something. Again, another weird bit of syntax where we're saying, okay, the status that we want to set out, so the tweet we want to set out, is equal to tweet. Now, we just define that right here. We're getting a random tweet from here. Say it again, question? Oh, sorry. And then after that all works, so this function has been defined, but because we actually want to run the function, we need to call it again. So we need to say, okay, now that we've defined this, send tweet. And it should run and send a tweet to Twitter. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually open up, I think it's salutations bot here. Okay. So somebody did something 44 seconds ago. I don't know who it was. They're getting ahead. So here's what we're going to do. Everybody is going to go in and they're going to edit this file with the potential tweets, add in your name, say hello, say something nice. And then we're going to save the file. So in this case, I'm going to save the file, make sure it's saved. And then back in the terminal, if I'm in Windows or if I'm in Windows, I do dir. If I'm on a Mac, I'll do ls. I'm going to make sure that Sparrow file is right here. And then I'm going to run Python. In this case, it might be Python 3 or Python, depending. And we'll run sparrow.py. Now I'm going to hit enter. Now it looks like it worked. Nothing got printed back. So let's take a look at the browser one more time. Oops, other browser. I'm going to refresh this. Yeah, and then you see somebody else said, "Hola, this is Fernando's. This is Fernando's student." So this was me a few seconds ago, and then two of you jumped ahead and did it. So awesome. So now ignore this promoted tweet. But there we go. That's it. Now we're actually going in and we're interacting with Python using our program. So you can send other stuff here to this Twitter account and tweet as this particular user. And we can just refresh this page and we'll see everybody's work here as they add things. Oh, look, somebody else just did another one. So thank you.
Since we are using the same account, it will be fun if you say your name. And those who are on the online, please introduce yourselves to us.
Yeah, of course. Say hi to us. So I'm just going to keep refreshing this. So how did I get, so great question, whoever sent that tweet out. How did I get the values from like 8 through 11? Was that you? Okay, so that was a great question. Now you can ask me questions like this. So those API credentialed values I got for this account by going to apps.twitter.com. I just didn't want to make you go through that whole process. So anybody, I could, so sure. So apps.twitter.com, you need to make a Twitter account and then go here. And then you'd have to sign in. I'm not signed in. Oh, shoot. No, I have to get passwords and stuff out. So you basically just make an account. You go to that URL, and then you say, create an app. You fill out a bunch of information. It's just stuff that I don't want to make you. Yeah. I just wanted to save you from having to do all that. Yeah. So you can do it for your own accounts. You can do it for other platforms too, and use things like this. But yeah, we've done it. Oh, it's greeting salutations bots. So here, let me paste that so you can see. Let's make it so. That's the URL right there. Let me put this. Let me refresh. So that's it. That's the whole project. That's the whole thing. And if you have questions, please come up. Especially the people who got stuck behind a little bit, I want to go ahead and help you through that. And new folks, feel free to ask questions as well. But that's all I have planned. So I'm going to just keep helping and feel free to ask questions as you have them. What's up?
Thank you very much. I enjoyed.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I appreciate it. Yeah, Thursdays. The URLs.
It seems like URL that you mentioned.
I think they're all in the email we sent out. So check them. Yeah, definitely. Hi, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks.
We'll join them
Thursday. Great. Yeah, great. We're looking forward to seeing you. Thanks. What are your names?
Vamsi.
Vamsi.
Yeah, myself, Jaya.
Jenna, say it.
Jaya.
Jaya? Okay, Jaya and Vamsi.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Great to meet you. I'm Fernando. Thank you. Have a good one. Thank you so much. Random out of those comments. So randomly pick out of that order. Now we refresh numbers. Not it won't limit at all. Limited by memory. Of course. You have to do this.
What did you say? Do it again. Not yet? Fernando?
So it's a Python version.
Something about Harry Potter.
You see it now?
I run but really when I'm talking about first environment, Okay, one more question. So, last question.
No.
Well, 10 now. Great, thank you so much. ¿Hablas español?
Okay. Gracias, de eso.
Gracias. Well, buena suerte. Let us know if you have any questions.
Hasta luego.
No, have a good one. Thank you. Thank you for stopping by. I appreciate it. Thanks. Feel free to come to the meetup whenever you want to learn more. Yeah, thank you. Mohammed, did you have a question? Let me refresh this again and see if there's anything new. Uh-oh, I gotta turn this off. PowerShell. Sorry, Dave. Yes. What is PowerShell? We can talk more about that. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll go back. I'll put it back. Let me switch it. Sorry, remote people. I'll put this up here. Sorry, that's my fault. There you go. Let's answer some of those questions soon, too. It can do a lot of stuff. Yeah, so answering other questions, because I want to make sure people can hear. A lot of good questions are being asked, and I want to answer all of them. So that question was, I see a lot of job postings that have PowerShell and Python listed on them. What is Python used for? What is PowerShell used for? So the reason probably for those particular job postings is they want you to do scripting stuff. So they have maybe some configuration. They want you to write some code that maybe does similar-ish things to what we just did, where it interacts with some API, it takes some action, it does something. And Python and PowerShell, I don't know much about PowerShell, but I think they're both good languages to do some basic scripting and do that. What Python is good for, though, is a lot more than just scripting. You can build web applications with Python. Instagram itself was built using Python, using a framework called Django that hopefully Albert will actually be giving a talk on Thursday, so if you want to learn more about that. So it can be used to build web applications. It can be used for data science, to do machine learning calculations, to process large amounts of data, to build local apps, things like that. So yeah, it's a good question. Okay, so how did the local message end up on Twitter? Who asked that so I can answer it for you? That was you? Okay. So that's a good question. It's a complicated question. If there's a lot of parts, right? So we can break it down. So we're starting on our machines. We got those API credentials, right? Those API credentials are basically our passwords to tell Twitter
if we have these API credentials, we are a legitimate user who can post to salutations by tweets. So if we, in this, there's a certain way that we can use those to tell the Twitter's API, which is the application programming interface. So they have these, essentially these URLs that you can make available to programming languages, Python, for example. And then we send information there with those values. And they say, okay, you look okay, you sent us the right stuff. That's fine, that's good. Let's go ahead and do what you told me to do. There's a bunch of parts in between there. So the first part would be like we downloaded Python. Python handles stuff for us using a library called requests. Requests allows us to do stuff called HTTP requests, so hypertext transfer protocol requests. So that's a different concept. But then we use that to interact with the API, and then we send specific requests and HTTP information to Twitter. It processes that, and it does it if it looks like it's. I can't go too deep because it would take me too long. But good questions. So, hi.
Hi, we just want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you for coming. What is this?
My name is Aisha.
Aisha?
Yes. Javeria.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Aisha. Thank you. Feel free to come to the weekly meetup if you want to learn more.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes, I have
Yes.
a 13-year-old, and
Bring him.
like,
Yeah,
that's what I really want to know.
Yeah.
But do you give like this kind of, because this is something
Not
people
every
love.
time. I can. I'm happy to go through the same material. It's more relaxed. Just because talking, it's not 6 hours. I'm happy to go over basics. I'll do whatever people want.
Is meetups paid? Is something on the paid?
It's not charged. We don't charge. I pay them to host the meetup. So at some point I may say, can people give me $5 so I can pay for it for another year? But no, it's free right now.
And if we bring like 4 or 5 kids, approximately they're like teenagers, for you to give a meetup, and we are ready to pay $5.
That's fine. I mean, if people want to do that and there's interest, I'm happy to do that. I think the biggest thing is to figure out if there is interest. That's the challenge we've had. So I mean, yeah, I join the Slack group. Join the Slack group if if we do another group of 50 who wants to do it, that's fine. I think the biggest thing is making it worth it for everybody. Also, probably next time, charging $5 so we can buy you food, and also charging $5 so I can pay the other manager for all the food he has bought us in the past. It's similar. It's just some cost like that, which would be good to sell. And I'm happy to do other topics too, but this generally is one of those topics.
I think the kids will love it. It's just that how many people do you want for it to happen?
At the meetup. Thank you for stopping by. Appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you. The meetup versus this. So this we can do 50 people. So we can do 50 people. The space we have right now at the meetup is only enough. Yeah, just a second. Is only enough for probably 30. It's probably only enough space for 30. And right now we have maybe 15, 20 people coming each time. Usually the format is though we have like a talk on some concept, and it's just free time to projects. Sarah can tell you more about that. She's come to a few different events.
Yeah.
What do we do? Explain what we do. I'm going to check on Roger. Thank you so much for coming, Aisha.
Yes,
And then say it again.